I'm Lauren Young. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I lead portfolio engagement and network support at Union Square Ventures. For the next 45 minutes, I'm honored to moderate a panel of outstanding leaders who have built remarkable communities and have graciously agreed to share their experiences and insights around how to really take advantage and of being a part of a large scale network. So I am joined by four phenomenal leaders. Without further ado, I'd love to kick off this discussion and begin. And rather than me introducing everyone, I thought we could kick off the first question with having each panelist both introduce themselves and also share a bit about the community that they've built. And I will turn it over to Jamoke.
Testing. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Lauren. So as Karen and she shared, I'm Jumoke Dada, and I am the founder of the Tech Women Network, which is an online community for technical women, and we host the annual HUTech Summit for women of color technologists. Did not turn off my phone. Okay. And we host the annual summit for women of color technologists. And currently, I'm working on a special initiative called Making Space. And it's produced by the R Street Institute. And it's an initiative to ensure that there's more diversity in the cybersecurity field. So it's a pledge that anyone can sign. And it's just that you commit to ensuring that whenever there's a conversation about cybersecurity or policies, that you'll have at least one woman or a minority present on the panel. So prior to working on the cybersecurity initiative, I'd been heavily growing the Tech Women Network. And it's something that initially started as just a way to encourage other women technologists to connect and to share resources and to find each other easily based on their location. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll share more later.
Thank you. Kadrin, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Kadrin. I'm the CEO and founder of Alpha. So Alpha is a professional network really focused on helping women succeed at work together. So that means something different to everyone. So in practice, the community is a little bit like a mashup of Reddit and LinkedIn, and we're really focused on helping women have a space where they can be really open with each other, talk really candidly about what's happening at work, and help them sort of navigate all the career challenges that they're having and do it collaboratively. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm also an engineer. And so I've actually built a lot of our software. And before founding Alpha, I worked in engineering at Y Combinator and MongoDB and some other tech companies too.
Fantastic. Thank you. Angie?
Okay. Hi, I'm Angie Chang. I'm the founder of Girl Geek X. And previously in another life, I co-founded Women 2.0. Now we're talking about Web 3. Now it's like Women of the Web 2.0. But I've been organizing Girl Geek dinners in the San Francisco Bay Area for 14 years now. And we've rebranded as Girl Geek X. Our website's girlgeek.io. I wasn't smart enough to put it in my title like Kadrin, but I encourage people to check it out. Our community is also of technical women. We have a lot of mid to senior level women who are, I looked at our last email that we sent, and the biggest segment of people were like 35 years old on average. So very mid-level women who are interested in a community. Our community is really centered around events because we love to go to Girl Geek dinners at different tech companies to learn about the latest technologies and meet other women. So we're very events based. And then now in the pandemic, we have, virtual Girl Geek dinners. And we also have a Elevate virtual conference coming up every International Women's Day. So that's March 8th. I know every year we celebrate, and it's in a way for companies to have their women leaders speak. So we have a lot of principal engineers, principal product manager, sales manager, to all the different types of roles in tech that people can look to and aspire to be, because we always hear about software engineering, but there are so many other types of titles in tech. So yeah, that's just in a nutshell what we do.
Thank you so much, Angie. Nidhi?
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. My name is Nidhi Gupta. I'm a former CPO, CTO, and these days I am the CEO and co-founder of divhersity.com. Diversity is a not-for-profit community. We're exclusively focused on female engineering leaders, so engineering managers, directors, VPs, CEOs, and above. Uh, in case you know, shouldn't come as a surprise to most of us, in case you didn't know, less than 1% of executive roles in engineering are women. That is just shockingly low. And our mission is to help more women thrive in their careers, thereby becoming role models for the next generation of engineering leaders. And we hope that through our work, inspire more women to not just enter the tech industries, but stay in the industry, over time aspire for these higher roles.
Fantastic. Nidhi, let's stay with you for a moment and diversity. I don't want to assume, but let me ask, why was building this community important to you?
Very interesting question, Lauren. So a few years ago, I was invited to a fellow CTOs. Supposed to be an intimate dinner. So I think subconsciously just assumed that I would walk into a room full of men because that's what my network was. But to my utter shock, I walked into a room full of 15 other female CTOs. And I'll be honest with you, when I first walked into that room and I saw 15 other women, I'm like, oh, it must not be CTOs. But they all were. Having been in the industry for more than 20 years, this was the first time I was with 15 other female CTOs, and they all were in the Bay Area. They lived a stone throw from me to know that they existed. After that dinner, I went on a mission to connect other female CTOs. Typically, since we don't know others like us, we don't have them in our network, we sort of start to buy into this narrative. Us just truly don't exist. When we do, and when we have roles open, we don't look far enough. We don't look beyond our immediate networks. As I connected with more female leaders, it became clear to me that my experience was not unique. They all thought that each of us did not exist. And it felt like we needed to gather all of us under one virtual roof. And that's how diversity came about. In an industry where we're so severely underrepresented, the challenges we face are unique. The biases we face are somewhat similar. So I wanted to create a safe space where members could be vulnerable and authentic. We could let them know that they belong, that more of us exist. And today, our community members, they network with each other, they learn and grow with each other, they support each other. Yes, the industry, our numbers are small today. If we band together, we can truly elevate our voices and grow and strengthen numbers. And reasons why we wanted to make sure that we had a micro community that's focused on just engineering leaders, because 1% in exec leadership is just highway robbery. It's just abysmal. And it is my personal mission in life now to help move that number.
I support you in that, and I think that is far smaller than I would have guessed, and it makes me sad. So thank you for trying to change that. You touched on vulnerability and authenticity, and I'd love to come back to that maybe in later on in the panel. I think those are incredible opportunities for participants even here on the call to think about ways in which they can engage in the communities and networks that they're in, and how to bring that vulnerability and authenticity to that community. So I'll put a pin in that, and I'll turn it over to Kadrin. Can you tell us a little bit about, the community that you have today, Alpha, but also, the impetus behind building it?
Yeah, for sure. So I worked as an engineer for many years before starting Alpha. And I also was a computer science grad in college. And throughout those times, I was, I would say very often the only woman in the room, or else, one of very few, often the most senior. And it was a pretty lonely experience. It's like having your own bathroom, is fun and funny to a point, and then it starts to get a little bit lonely. And so at one of the companies that I worked at, we started a women in engineering group, and it was very simple, just like a dinner series. We would meet once a month. And it was the first time I'd really gotten to know a group of other women in engineering that I could talk to openly, get advice from. And so, that was the start of having a network like that. Eventually, I would say a bit after that, I discovered at work that I was getting paid less than some guys on my team. It was a super upsetting experience. And, I felt really thankful at the time when I was trying to figure out how to navigate it, that I now had this group of other women that I could go to get advice about, like, how do you deal with compensation issues? How should I talk to my boss about this? I feel sad about it. Like, how should I deal with that feeling? Having those kind of really open conversations. And I felt really thankful that I had that group of women. And so, that's really where it comes from, is that I wanted other women to have that network, specifically engineers, but it goes, beyond that. One of the things I discovered early on, for example, is that women in sales have a lot of similar sorts of feelings of isolation that women in engineering do. So, really wanting to help people have that network, have that support, choose not to leave tech, because obviously that's a big problem. So be the space where women feel like they have others that they can sort of share their experiences with and get that support.
It's tremendous. And kind of in line with the themes that we're talking about, I think compensation and negotiation are, for myself, two of the hardest areas to talk about, and to be, vulnerable and authentic in talking about it realistically. And maybe it's a female thing, maybe it's just hard in general. I'd argue that, sometimes the odds are stacked against women, and you have to tackle all of it at once and have confidence, but not too much confidence. And so I think, to your point, when you turn around and say, I really needed my network for this, and it came through for me, and how do I allow other women to have access to this, is really powerful. So thank you for sharing. Jumoke, I'd love to turn over to you. Can you, in your experience in not only building a community, but also having a network and a community of your own, can you tell us the story where you heavily utilized or leaned into your own network?
Sure. I think, I've done it a lot, so I'll start there. But I think if I'll share one, it will be with creating the Hugh Tech Summit specifically. So as I shared in part of my intro, it all started for me when I launched the Tech Women Network in 2017. And I just noticed that there were a number of women of color joining. It's diverse, it's for all women, but I just started to pay attention to that. And I've worked in tech for over 17 years, and I just started seeing women that I never saw before, never encountered, whether it was at a conference or anything. And I was just curious about, like, where are you guys? Where have you been? Why don't I see more of you, like, especially in my city? And fast forward, so I launched it in March, and then by that fall, I wanted to get to know more of these women. So I hosted what I then called a Hugh Tech Talk, and it was a dinner and fireside chat with a local African American senior vice president who had worked in tech her entire life. And I just thought that it would be great to come together and learn from her, like, what has her experience been. And the dinner was phenomenal. I mean, people didn't, I think I left people still there. And after that, I realized that one dinner or one night wasn't enough, that we needed a full day. And as a result of that, I created the Hugh Tech Summit and had that in 2018. So I leaned into my network because it was interesting, encouraging people to apply to speak. And that was one of the things that I realized. It was just eye-opening to learn that a number of like technologists were introverted. And so when there are these call to speakers, or when there are these opportunities, that they're not necessarily the first to submit to talk or to speak. So I tapped into just my network and just people that I've met along the way, and just said, hey, you need to speak, or I'm signing you up to speak, or, things like that. And I'm just so happy because from there, a number of women have gone on to speak and host workshops and things like that. So I tapped into my network just to empower women to come to the forefront. The mantra is no more hidden figures. Like, we're here, we've been here in this space. Like, speak, come forth. So that would be my story.
No more hidden figures. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful what you're saying around the call out for speakers, and a layer of almost imposter syndrome of sorts, where the experience that someone thinks they have is never enough, to teach or share with others. But it is. And even just to your point of saying, I'm signing you up and you're great. And, you have a lot to share. And I think that's incredible. And also taking it from the tech talk to a summit where, you can just tell that the energy and the momentum is there. I think there's moments when you strike to build something where it's just like the momentum is behind you. That's incredible. Thank you. And Angie, I want to turn it over to you. Can you give us a sense of a time when you've tapped in or utilized your network?
I guess I built my network a long time ago with LinkedIn being around since about the time that Web 2.0 started, and we started Women 2.0. And I always, whenever I met somebody at an event or anywhere, we become LinkedIn friends and maybe even Facebook friends. And suddenly I'm adding people on all these social networks. I'm very liberal with my social networks. I don't have I don't clean my friends list or anything ever really. So it's just like, I just invite people in. You don't share it too much because, it's a scary world out there. But I think things I've done with my network is, ask for calls for speakers, invite people to these Girl Geek dinners over the years, share news about the latest research on women in tech, women in business, women in leadership. And then also I think about the power of our networks has been really for our community and the women that come to Girl Geek dinners. They meet each other. It's not just networking, but it's also very valuable things like getting their next amazing job. So some of the success stories that I've heard were people that attended a Slack Girl Geek dinner. And then this is Slack when it was a small company. And they attended the Slack Girl Geek dinner, and then they became hired, and they ended up working there for over 4 years, like 2 women, and became very senior in the company. And then later, I didn't find out about it till like years later. And then they told me like, oh, actually we got our jobs because we went to the Slack Girl Geek dinner. And I was like, oh my God. So like, I think those are what really keeps us going, is like knowing and hearing about these awesome experiences, and then seeing one of those women like on like that trading room floor when they like went public. I was like, oh my, like this is really helping women in tech and getting their like amazing leadership roles where they're like highly visible. And I think a few of them are speaking at the conference. So if you go to Girl Geek.io, they're actually speaking at the conference on March 8th, and it's free. Sorry, shameless plug, but I invited them to speak, and they're happy to speak because they're like in such amazing positions now that they're like,
I think Angie might be.
But yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Angie. We lost the last few seconds of what you said, but I think we understood. Awesome. Well, let me pivot a little bit and just honestly pass the mic back over to Jumoke. In thinking about, you mentioned like 17 years of experience and being able to kind of leverage networks along your career. Can you talk a little bit about how networks in and of itself have helped change the trajectory of your career?
Sure. So yeah, like I shared, I worked in tech. I started a number of years ago, and I would say prior to probably 2016, 27, yeah, probably 2016, as I was planning to launch the network, I wasn't known. I'm not saying that I'm like known now, but like I wasn't known, or I just kind of worked in tech and that was it. I worked in tech. I was also like producing some events for women, but I wasn't known or considered or sought after to like talk, speak about being a woman in tech, despite having so much experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I launched the Tech Women Network and started networking more. And then from there, it just opened up doors to like speak on panels or to speak at a conference or just a number of things that I wasn't thinking about before starting a community. But that's what it led to. And like, even if I give the example of the Q Tech Summit, with starting that in 2018, since then I've connected with like over 100, probably over 120 women of color speakers at this point. I've worked with like amazing companies that have supported or sponsored the summit over the years, so that opened that door. And then with last year specifically, because of everything that happened in 2020 with the pandemic, and just everything that was happening around the world, I started paying more attention to cybersecurity. And because of just how I am and what I had been doing with TWN and Hugh, I said, you know what, this next summit, I want to focus specifically on women in cybersecurity. Like, I want to know, who are these women that work behind the scenes? So I held that in 2020, and that ultimately led to the initiative that I'm working on now, which Making Space, and that's to create more space for women and minorities in cybersecurity. So that's just an example of how all things kind of work together
Mm-hmm.
and moved along in a way that I didn't really plan it. That's just how my career navigated. So
It's a really, thank you for sharing. And it's a really good point around how 2020 and the pandemic has shifted our communities and networks. And, while our networks have been around longer than COVID, it's still, I think many of us have tweaked the way in which we engage and the way in which we, leverage the power of our networks. And I think that that's a healthy transition. And, hopefully we can touch on that a little bit later. But today's world is very different than even a couple of years ago and what we would have considered our community. So thank you for sharing. Angie, I'd love to ask you the same question around, examples or insights around how your network has changed the trajectory of your career.
I guess very similar is I get asked to speak on panels, which is fun. But aside from that, I think of Girl Geek dinners as a retention effort for women in tech. And that makes all the work kind of worth it. And also, for the longest time, I've always thought of myself as PR for women in tech, where women in engineering are often like introverts and shy and are not the best at marketing themselves. And I always would encourage them to write blog posts about themselves and share their expertise. And I think it's a lot of like, we have to do that work of encouraging each other to do that hard thing, whether it's writing that thought leadership post on Medium and then helping each other edit it and then posting it, or just encouraging each other that we are smart and talented and we deserve to be out there speaking, writing, getting those roles, getting those salaries, for sure. I think we have to do that work, starting with ourselves. And there's no easier way to do it. I feel like with Kadrin and all of us, we're working on solutions to try to make this work more automated and techy. But at the end of the day, it's really just, that human connection that we have to continue to do ourselves. There's no automating it. We're not robots. So
not yet. Just kidding. No, it's a very good point. And you touched on something which I think is so wonderful around like considering yourself doing PR for women in tech and, having a role in like retention and retaining really strong female leaders in tech and in business and just like in life, and being able to build a pedestal that many women can step on to leverage and kind of move forward. I think that's a really wonderful, selfless way of putting it, as opposed to saying, what can my network do for me? It's also saying, what can I do to amplify this network that I'm a part of, which is just a slight verbiage shift, but it also allows you to give and to get from a network instead of just a one-way platform. So I think that also, kind of broadens access for a lot of people and amplifies the network effects of it. Wonderful. Well, Kadron, I'd love to pivot around, you talked about Alpha, but also just like your community when you turned around and there weren't a lot of other female software engineers. How do you go about, or how have you gone about building your network?
Yeah, good question. So it's changed a lot over time, partly because now I'm a founder and before I was an engineer, and partly because of COVID, and partly because I'm older. So all of these things. So I'll talk a little bit about early through current days. So in the beginning, early in my career, when I felt like I really had no network at all, I would basically go to meetups and attend talks at tech companies and things like that. And I think one of the other things you can do is basically join a sort of bigger company where there is a more established team, where even though there maybe aren't that many women, there are going to be some, and get to know your coworkers that way. And so just do a lot of reaching out. I am an introvert, so that I always found it a little bit tiring. So I had to really invest the effort into actually doing it and make myself do it. So that was early on. Over time, especially starting Alpha, when I started building the online community, that's really sort of taken over my life, admittedly. So, and it has gone, it's sort of worked well with where we're at with COVID. Just sort of moving my networking online. Like I personally, and I've also seen a lot of other people sort of be open to meeting new people that they haven't actually met in person, but doing it digitally in a way that they maybe weren't open to doing before. So, for me, it's usually meeting women through Alpha, right? So meeting our members. I've actually made friends that way, which is really exciting. We've hired a bunch of people onto our team through Alpha, so that's cool too. But then I have friends, for example, who will do things like actually meet somebody that they have an interesting conversation with on Twitter, for example. So I think there are a lot of different ways and places that you can do it. But I think, my experience is basically being more open to meeting somebody digitally than I hadn't been before. So I think that's been really helpful and has sort of changed the way that I meet people. And yeah, it really snowballs. Like now I don't have to put in that sort of concentrated, focused effort on meeting new people. It's sort of like the network that I have built. I meet new people through them. People will introduce me to new people. And so it's more like maintaining the connections that I have and being open to potentially great ones going forward.
Well, it's a good point, and it answers one of the questions around, the community being identifying as predominantly introverts. And so I think to your point around today's world, leveling the playing field more or less to enabling people to connect virtually as opposed to always having to go to that dinner or that happy hour or, speak in order to meet people. I think, we'll talk a little bit about this, I hope, but in real life versus online, to someone who's maybe uncertain on how to even start to engage, I think online can be really, a nice entry point for many. But thank you for sharing. Nidhi, I'd love to turn it over to you around, how have you gone about building your network and how has that changed over time and maybe even in today's world?
Absolutely. So I echo what Kadron said. I'm an introvert as well. And I think it's compounded in a bad way that I have a fear of rejection. So I don't want to just reach out to Lauren or a Kadron seeking something, and what if she says no? What if she doesn't reply to me? Especially in circumstance when you need something. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, I'm looking for a job and I need to reach out to Lauren so she can connect me to companies. Oh my God, I'm asking her for a favor. Big deal, right? So introvert, fear of rejection, and asking for something, all of those three things combined just make me not want to reach out. It's just, I have to step out of that comfort zone. I have to reach out. I have to send her an email, wait for that reply. And oh my God, when the reply doesn't come, I'm panicking. But I think COVID has made it easier. It's made it harder. And so the first thing I used to do is ask when it eliminate one of these three factors. Reach out and build your network when you really don't need anything. So today I don't need anything. I'm not looking for. I reach out to Lauren and say, hey, let's grab a coffee. So in the future that we have that relationship built and that connection built, in the future, Lauren could potentially keep me in mind for opportunities and vice versa. Now we at least have one connection that we formed, right? So I think one is reach out. It's best to reach out when you don't know anything, if you're hesitant. And second, honestly, it's okay. We're busy. If Lauren doesn't reach back to me, that's totally fine. There are plenty of other people on the planet. So I want to just overcoming, like not let yourself and your emotion, your insecurities get in the way of expanding your network. Tell you, a lot of times you blindly reach out to somebody saying, hey, let's grab coffee. 8 out of 10 times they will reply, especially if you're not asking for something, they will reply back and they will connect with you. I think the second thing I would say is, at least for me, I have been very conscious in terms of how I grow my network. So as I mentioned, after that dinner, I was like, when I look at my list full of CTOs, where are these women? I need to find more women. And then I became a lot more conscious. An analogy I can give is, when you're single, all your friends are single. When you get married, over time, all your friends become married. And when you have a kid, all your friends have like kids. So your communities and your relationships, they evolve. So that's how you need to be goal oriented. So if you seek out VCs in your network, if you seek out hiring managers in your network, if you want to expand your network to other amazing female leaders, seek them, join these communities. And that's what I did, right? So I communities, I started following some leaders. Based on that, connected with others. And honestly, today, like it's been goal oriented. I've been super mindful and conscious. And today, when I look at my LinkedIn feed, I would say 80% of them are amazing, awesome women.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just, you just need to not get in your own way and make an effort. It doesn't come naturally to us.
Well, amen to that. And I would absolutely respond to your email. So always feel free to reach out. But, it's interesting. And I'll just share one anecdote we talk a lot about at USV is around how networks, typically all the participants, if you take the participant group, 80-20 is usually the balance of 80% of the group lurking, 20% contributing. And sometimes it's 90-10, sometimes it's 70-30. But like in general, most participants in any community are consuming the content. They're watching from the sideline. They're gaining that knowledge through other people's insights and sharing. And I think, that's okay. And I think, just understanding that your voice will evolve and change. And so if you join and you're lurking for 6 months and you have something to share when someone asks a question, that's engagement. And that's so powerful. And it doesn't always have to be a give if you want to join a community in order to be a part of it. So I just always think that that's kind of an interesting dynamic. But thank you so much, Nidhi, for sharing. Now, we had a question from the audience that I wanted to pause and just quickly touch on, because I think this might be relevant for many people participating. But do you have any recommendations? And I'm going to turn it to Kadron and Jumoke. Do you have any recommendations for an absolute newbie to get into web development in terms of education? Are boot camps worthwhile, or is it more strongly recommended to take an associate or BA degree first? So let's just touch on that very quickly before we continue.
Sure. Yeah, I think it depends. There's really not one straightforward answer, because it really depends on every individual and how you learn. So some people may thrive in a boot camp, a 6-month or 6-week boot camp Whereas someone else might need traditional learning, like to go to a, you know, a university, or continue their education in that manner. So it really depends on you. And if it's something where you don't know, I would start with taking some classes on, like, online, just to kind of like get a feel for it. Like, there's a ton of different platforms, Coursera, Udemy, etc. Like, just take one course and just see how you grasp the information. And then from there, you can maybe start to think, like, is this something where if I go through a rigorous boot camp program, I think I can thrive, or will I need more time? And it depends on your schedule also. So unfortunately, there's just not one answer. It really depends on you and your learning style. But I say start with an online course.
Thank you. Kadrian, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think that is really good advice. I think the thing I'd add is just that programming isn't for everyone. It's for lots of people, but I think figuring out if it's for you in a lightweight way before you invest in spending the money and on a bigger program is really important. And so I think taking a class online is one of the ways to do it. And when you're taking the class, figuring out if the content really excites you, if you find yourself wanting to spend the time to figure out the bug, to build things yourself, I think really assessing that while you're going is important, because I think the biggest thing for being successful in programming is like the sort of desire to just like, bang your head against the wall for however long until you figure it out. And, I've had friends who have taken classes and done boot camps who love it and go on to be really successful in engineering, and folks who take it and want nothing more to do with it. So I think trying to figure that out a little bit before you spend the money is definitely a good thing. And I think classes are a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully that answered your question. And, I know we'll run over a little bit. I have two other things I wanted to touch on with these panelists because I don't want to let them all go. But Karen, I do believe we have a chance, maybe a minute or two at the end for Q&A. So while you're listening to this, if you're thinking about things that you want to ask the panelists, shoot them in the chat. We can't see it, but Karen will share it with us. So we'll do our best to do a lightning round before we wrap. But two other questions I wanted to touch on. Angie, I wanted to start with you. We've talked a little bit about this new world we're living in around the pandemic and COVID, and there'll be some new norms after all of this settles. And in this current world, how do you think about the balance of in real life events and in-person connectivity and online?
I think what I've done during the pandemic is I've had Zoom coffees with people. Like I use Calendly as a great scheduling tool. It directs people to set up a Zoom meeting with me. And then suddenly it's scheduled, it's easy. People just click in it and you can catch up with someone or learn all about them in, half an hour, an hour. I've also gotten boba with people outdoors just to catch up. And this is like my theme is like, let's get boba somewhere like local. For hybrid events, I've definitely seen people try to do in-person events. Like we've tried to do a Girl Geek dinner in January, but Omicron happened and suddenly we canceled it. It was supposed to be outdoors at a restaurant in San Francisco, but still we're like, just like abundance of caution. Let's not do it. We don't want to be a super spread event. Mm-hmm. But there is, going to a virtual events like Elevate on March 8th. And then you can do a Girl Geek dinner afterwards. You can find an outdoor restaurant and then connect with people and dare to be that person that says, we're going to do a Girl Geek dinner. Like myself and Kadrian have said, let's do a Girl Geek dinner and go to this outdoor restaurant. And then you can actually make those connections and have a really great memory to have with these people that you've suddenly met who are like-minded. And it also started as an engineer. So I get that feeling of feeling like I need to meet other women in tech. And that's why we're all here.
Awesome. Good point. Thank you. Jumoke, I wanted to pass that over to you as well.
Yeah, so since I've gone virtual with everything, I really haven't looked back. Like I haven't attempted to do anything hybrid yet. Everything has been online. It's been digital. I've made personal attempts to, well, not, I shouldn't say attempts, but like, some individual outreach and created like some, I guess I'll call it like security pods, like people that I can meet up with like we have an understanding about just kind of like our lifestyles and then how we're navigating this pandemic. And we'll meet up on occasion to have lunch or brunch. But I've been strictly digital for the most part. The events have been digital, online, etc. I haven't attempted to do a hybrid event, but I think for me and where I am right now, and where the network and my communities are right now, it's just about just keeping things safe.
Mhm.
And so I just encourage people to kind of do the same thing that I'm doing personally and professionally. Is if you have a connection with someone and you engage and you have Zoom calls and things like that, if you feel comfortable, then meet up, one-on-one or in a small group. But that's the extent.
And I'm laughing because I think we're all virtual, right? Like we're all remote right now. And Angie's smiling as someone walks behind. Yeah, no, we're all, not in an office. And you're right. I mean, I think it's there's a lot that's going to be the new norm, and we think about that a lot at USV and how to support a portfolio now totally virtual, because there's a lot of blessings in that. We now can broaden access even more, but harder to localize for sure. I have one other question. And again, this is my final question, but hopefully others want to add in the comments or anything, please feel free. But I'd love to ask all of the panelists. We've talked about networks at this grandiose scale and, really being able to build impact and build your career, kind of with the help of your networks. And I think at a high level, it can be very overwhelming for many. And so if each one of you can take the chance to share one takeaway, whether it's a bite-sized way in which you engage with your community, or one insight or lesson learned that didn't work, or you've since changed and it's really helped you amplify your network and community, I'd love to give each one of you the chance to answer that. Maybe I can go first and then we'll wrap after. But one thing I shared with the panelists yesterday during our prep call was I like to take my previous month's worth of meetings and download it, and then set reminders about reaching out to those people that I want to reconnect with at a later date. And I just boomerang that to myself. And it seems really silly and bite-sized, but it's actually allowed me to not forget about those incredibly powerful people that I get a chance, and I'm very grateful to be able to talk to some of these people. And it allows me to build a relationship with them without having to have the anticipated email, like Nidhi was saying, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to them in 6 months or a year. Instead, it pops up a month later and I'm like, oh my gosh, Nidhi, how are you? That's it. And it doesn't have to be as big. So that's my one bite-sized takeaway. I'm going to turn it over to Nidhi just because now I've pointed to you a couple of times.
I would say in terms of how you use, let's say, I think Lauren's given great advice in terms of how to build your network. I would say, how do you lean on it? Lean on it. So even if you have a friend group, seek their advice, share with them. I'll give you my personal example. After I had my daughter, I was looking for a new job, and I've always been in the world, and no startup would hire me. A female engineering executive who cannot work 24/7. They literally would tell me on my face that I was not hireable. I actually spoke with one of my girlfriends after many months of suffering, say, I go back into the industry. And a girlfriend who was like, it's not their fault. Well, it is their. It was like, it's how you're presenting yourself. So why do you have to share that you're a new mom? You don't have to. You're a kick-ass worker. You will still be a kick worker. Do that. And literally, I changed my spiel, and nobody ever told me that they were not going to hire me as a new mom. So leverage the community, leverage your network, lean on them, be vulnerable and authentic when they are there to support you. And if you belong to a community, like Lauren said, participate. The communities you will get as much from it as you give it. If you do not give it anything, you're not going to get much out of it. So utilize it. It's there to support you.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll turn Jamoke.
I echo everything Nidhi said. The only thing I would say, and I'll speak to, I looked at the chat and I saw earlier there were a lot of comments around being introverted. And now is the time, like introverts rock right now. Kadrian said, like it's digital, it's online, and I'm not saying it lessens how you may feel inside, but this is great. Like so many people have maybe anxiety about meeting someone in person or going to like a networking event. Now you just sit behind your computer and you can send people LinkedIn connection requests. You can send emails to people. I mean, this is like the greatest time for introverts. I'm just sorry, I'm so fun. Like, and don't assume that someone is unreachable or unavailable. A lot of people are more available now, just navigating. Well, I shouldn't assume, but just I feel like people are more accessible now in this virtual digital world, and so I would just encourage you all to just get started. Like start networking. Choose one person that you've always wanted to talk to, whether it's at your job or someone that you wanted to catch up with, that and you were in the same program, whatever the case may be. Like reach out to them, send them an email, send them a LinkedIn connect, and make concerted effort to have a call with them, a Zoom call, whatever it is. But introverts, like get started, like really, really take advantage of these times.
Amazing. Kadrian?
Yeah, you both have made really good points. I also just want to say I'm really sad to hear that you had to hide the fact that you were a new mom. I think that really sucks and is a topic for a whole different panel. I would say, and to actually answer the question, that I think the biggest thing for me, and maybe it's part of being an introvert, is like I used to have a lot of trouble going to events where it felt like I was going to network. Like the point was to like get something from people. The transactional nature of that felt really bad to me, and it was sort of a blocker for me. And so one of the things that I did was reframe the way I think about meeting people basically into like, how can I help them? Like, what can I do to provide value to them? And I think for me, that made it a lot easier to connect with people. And also, to the point of like, what you put in is what you'll get out. Like it comes back to you in many ways that you'll never expect when you're helpful to somebody else. So my piece of advice is to, just try to be helpful to the people around you and that you're meeting. Just see how you can be helpful to them, and you'll never know how they'll help you.
Last but not least, Angie, do you want to add anything?
I second the thing about introverts. It's a great time to be saying, let's connect on FaceTime. Let's connect on Discord. Let's connect on Animal Crossing. And I keep asking people now, like, is there like the metaverse that we're supposed to be connecting in now? Like, can we try some new platform and just get on there and catch up while we're like trying out the latest and greatest? So there's definitely innovative ways to like do your meetups with people that aren't just getting Boob or just getting a Zoom meeting with people.
Well, while we wrap, I think vulnerability and authenticity are important when you turn to your communities, being your real self. I mean, we talked about everything from compensation and negotiation and how hard that can be for many, at least for myself, to being a new mom and, the balance of sharing that, not sharing that, being a new parent, new partner, new, single person, whatever the case might be. I mean, there's always a new turn in life, and you're going to have to balance that with work and life. I think that that's incredibly hard, but also a network is built to support you in whatever point of life you're in. And so just be thoughtful around that, because everyone in that network is probably also going through a hard time in this pandemic, a hard time in life. So everyone is human. And I think understanding that when going into it, it makes it a little less scary. And also, thank you so much for the four of you. I know we've gone over a little bit of time, but thank you so much, Karen, for organizing this outstanding group of female leaders. Hopefully, the participants can reach out to these communities, join them, and just take advantage. So thank you so much, everybody.